Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start. Apologies for absence. Councillor John Spracken. Are there any declarations of interest? None. The minutes on pages 4 to 11. Are they an accurate record?
Great.
3. Are there any matters arising? Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the minute regarding the governance for the LTC, at the last Cabinet meeting, Brian informed us that the articles for the LTC were being drafted. I just wanted to make a request to the Chair that those members of the opposition that would take active part in the LTC see those articles as soon as possible. And then the second question is, I appreciate we can't discuss this in open session, but if a private note could be shared with those who, from the opposition who will be sitting on the LTC about the most senior officer and the negotiations for that post, if we could have an update on that, I'd be very grateful.
Any further matters arising? Right, there are no written questions from the public, there are no written questions from councillors, and there are no petitions. Moving on to item 8 on the agenda, the forward plan at pages 12 to 19.
Sorry, Chair, can I just update Cabinet in relation to the regeneration of Slacksbury's, Catherine's, Elm Hatch and Bushy Croft? We have been promising to bring this to Cabinet, but instead what I'm intending to do tomorrow is actually publish an update to all councillors in relation to these 4 particular matters, mainly due to the fact that while Slacksbury is okay, one of the main contributors to the Catherine's development has since changed their mind, which has therefore given us an extra strain on that. Elm Hatch is okay. We will be taking Bushy Croft out of the redevelopment, mainly due to the fact after some soft marketing testing with the local community as well as the school, the difficulty is we could build houses there, but there'd be nowhere for anybody else to go or for anyone to park. But what we are also introducing is that there is a small piece of land at the Yorks which was bungalows for elderly people, and one of the things we would like to do is do some soft market testing to see if a developer would be interested in looking at that particular site specifically for fit elderly people to live in. So a report will be sent to all councillors, which I've just approved tonight and should be going out in the morning, Chair.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Charles.
Just on a couple of issues with the forward plan, Chair. In terms of page 15, the customer services strategy, it's just a question over what the scope of this report will be. Will it be looking at improving digital services for residents to access the council? Just a brief comment on that would be really grateful, just to understand what that report will look like when it's presented to Cabinet. The next question is just over page 17, Nicholsfield Pavilion refurbishment works, just to get an understanding of what that's going to be announcing. Obviously, in the Bush Fair Award, there's a lot of interest and expectation about the Nicholsfield Pavilion, so just a brief comment of that would be really helpful in terms of our forward plans and opposition. And just to reaffirm the good news in terms of July 2016 and the paper on the selection of an operator for Harlow Enterprise Hub. We're all very, of course, on a cross-party basis, excited about 2016-17, and I think it will be a game-changing 2 years in terms of regeneration for this town. If I may beg the Chair's indulgence just for a brief moment, I would like to personally congratulate our Chief Executive for his honour. I have affectionately called Malcolm Harlow's Sir Humphrey. I think that I think his leadership of this council over many years has been a tribute not to just him personally, but the officer corps who deliver their function to this town, and I'm eternally grateful for his service.
Just briefly on the customer service strategy, its scope is quite broad in looking at all aspects of customer service. That includes digital channels for self-service and what have you, as well as the other channels for contact, whether that's through face-to-face, through email, through the phone systems, looking at all aspects of customer services. I don't know whether you want to add into that.
Nicholsfield.
And then if Councillor Durkin could comment on the Nicholsfield.
Well, I'll ask Greg to update you.
Nicholsfield Pavilion, the report will come back with plans for the complete refurbishment of the pavilion. The initial expressions of interest and the tenders were not to our satisfaction at all, so it's been re-tendered and some better ideas come in.
Great.
Any other questions or comments on the forward plan? So let's note that. There are no decisions taken by the legal deputy portfolios. Others. I'd like to propose, as items 10 to 16 are all interrelated, that we take them on block. And I would like to. I'm sure there's going to be individual comments and questions on each of the individual items. It's absolutely not an attempt to circumvent that. It's just that they are a set of interrelated things. It would be, I think, to approve one and not another would be interesting. So I'm going to propose that.
Seconded, Chair.
So, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Jeff. I'll start with the corporate plan on page 34 and better housing for Harlow. It's the final dash point, which reads, provide effective tenancy enforcement support tackling health and well-being. I don't quite understand how enforcement can apply to health and well-being. Unless I'm missing something.
It's looking at all forms of tenancy support, but when we consider things like health and safety hazards and making sure that our tenants are as safe as possible.
If I could move on to page 48 under well-being and social inclusion. There's one of the key ambitions in paragraph 1 is about homelessness, but there's no other reference to homelessness in the rest of that section, either in terms of achievements or objectives. So is this duplication or confusion with the much bigger section on housing, which does address the homeless issue? Fifth dash point in the paragraph 1.
Yes, I'm sure.
Well, general comment from me while I'm finding it. So clearly, in terms of the execution of the whole strategy and what have you, that's clearly covered in the sort of housing portfolio. But in terms of a broader, looking at well-being, I think the homelessness is one of the elements that we've looked at. It's not that it's been. I think it's just that the area was going to address that most directly in the housing portfolio section. That's all.
And just to add to, sorry, I've got a thing. Just to add to that, there is a homeless work strategy through the wellbeing strategy. There is an area that runs through that, which is obviously including bringing thing. It does do cover it under wellbeing. I guess it's gone under further in housing, which is why it's not further expanded within that actual section.
Can I also ask, under this particular section on community wellbeing, there's no reference to the role and activities of the Harlow Fairness and Diversity Partnership. I thought that would have been a key element of it.
It is true that hasn't had the traction I would like, and I enjoy find it hasn't had the traction that I would like. There has been some initial meetings, but it hasn't been followed through, and I do intend to give that some fresh impetus in the coming year.
Turning to page 56, what we call this is clean free environment. I and tackle town-wide parking problems. The fourth dash point, improvement of the general environment by providing a more environmentally efficient transport system. What if Councillor would care to elaborate on what he actually means by that?
It's really me. Yeah. Sorry, that comes under my portfolio because it's well, it's tackle town-wide parking problems through the North Essex Parking Partnership, and I'm actually a member of that particular area. And what we want to do is to look at more creative ways of different systems. Now, if that is about getting people to car share or to do more about bikes, and certainly in the town centre what we're trying to do is create those particular issues. And much longer term, which links not only to the parking partnership but also the town centre, is actually the regular travel between the town centre to the train station, and whether or not there's better connections we can make in that way. So it's aspirational, but the difficulty is we know that we've got to do something because we've simply got too many cars on the road currently.
Would it be helpful to perhaps expand on that a bit? You know, improved in general by providing more environmentally efficient transport system. You know, as I say, it covers a range of activities, but the actual expression itself doesn't actually mean a great deal. I'm grateful for that question. Chair, if we move on to the medium-term financial strategy, page 90, paragraph 4.1a. I'm afraid this is a bit of a Anorak-ish question, but just for the sake of accuracy. It refers to how the HRA expenditure is financed, but it doesn't include depreciation. Depreciation forms the bulk of the capital programme. I thought it would be worthy of a mention.
Yeah, I think the paragraph that you're referring to is making general reference to the revenue expenditure rather than the capital elements and the capital financing. So we focus on the key revenue income streams that fund the core HRA revenue items of expenditure, but it's not making specific reference to the depreciation and the way that works in terms of financing capital.
But the HRA is everything these days. You know, it's both the revenue and capital spending. And expenditure from there is you know, sort of does go into directly into the capital programme. Yeah, if we can move on to page 108 under the general fund revenue budget. There's two paragraphs there. It starts on 107 about the new homes bonus. But paragraph 21 says that 416,000 from the new homes bonus will go to regeneration enterprise fund to support the non-housing stock condition survey, implementation of the LATC, and to stimulate the town centre. How much of that is going to the LATC, and what is it actually for? Bearing in mind that you've already spent £500,000 in the current year on reserving the HRA.
Which page is this on the side?
Number 21. It's the last paragraph from 107 that carries on 108.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think just in response to the question, we're earmarking a sum to go into the reserve and outlining that some of that may be used for the LATC. At this point, we haven't determined a specific amount, but we've already made provisions within the HRA and the general fund for up to £750,000 to support the implementation. If there's any further requirements, then some of this may be used to supplement that sum.
So if it's not spent will stay in the retained fund reserve.
Yes.
If I can move on to page 148. We're looking at we're talking about proposed movements on earmarked reserves. If we look at the investor save reserve, there's £250,000, a nice round sum coming out. Where's it going?
That's the sum that's currently proposed to support the implementation of the LATC for the general fund contribution.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I think.
That's the general fund's contribution towards the potential cost of establishing the LATC during 16-17.
In addition to the money coming out of the new homes bonus?
No, what we've currently got, we have 250,000 from the general fund reserve that's identified here. Then we have £500,000 that has previously been earmarked from the HRA. And what we've said earlier in the report is should there be any requirement for any further funding towards the establishment of the LATC, then it would be used from the reserve that's being topped up from the new homes bonus in 16-17.
So the whole idea of the investor save fund is that money is drawn out obviously to investor save, but then part of the savings are then paid back to the fund to top it up again. So are you saying that 250,000 for investor save will then be repaid from what's being spent on the LATC? So
It will be the case that we'll be saving money by actually bringing the contract back in-house. So at the end of the day, it'll be part of the investment to save programme.
sorry to you, but so are you saying, Councillor Danvers, that there will be a direct transfer from the general fund back into the investor save fund, which is what the basis of it, how it works? Part of the savings being achieved, then go back to the investor save to create, to keep the fund topped up.
It's early days, isn't it? We'll only know when we get there. Can't speculate.
I'll take that we know then. So that's a straight grade on the reserves to top up general fund spending.
That's not the case.
So if and when the savings are realised, then the decision will be made to transfer the investor save.
With the greatest respect, the investor save fund, when it was set up, always was that part of the savings being achieved by the investment will be paid back into the investor save fund in order to create more funds for the future, and also to prove that savings are being achieved.
And that's how I just responded, which is that if and when those savings are realised, then they may well be transferred back into the investor save budget. But you can't sort of take it out, put them back in immediately before the savings have been realised.
It's over a period.
Indeed.
But unless you've identified the savings, how do you know you're going to be that the investment is actually going to be worthwhile? The whole purpose is you are going to make a saving, and therefore some of the savings over a period, say 5 years or whatever, will then flow back. Not all of it, obviously. So, I mean, what I've heard so far tonight is you're taking the £250,000 because you've got nowhere else to get it from to spend on this programme, and you've got absolutely no idea whether it's actually going to work and whether it's actually going to work. And whether it's actually going to work.
So, with respect, Councillor, that's not what I said.
Yes, it is.
No, it absolutely isn't. What I said was that when the savings are actually realised, there's a difference between planning for the savings, making an investment in the LATC to realise the significant savings that were in the financial reports. There's a difference between that and actually realising them. You can't transfer money back in the investor save from savings that haven't actually been realised yet. And you've just stated incorrectly that we've no idea what the savings are. Those were clearly articulated in the independent reports that came on the LATC. Yeah. And when those savings are actually realised, and you read note 5, this is what it says in the report, they may all be transferred back. You can't transfer them back into the investor save before they've been realised. That's just nonsense.
Chair, Councillor Carter's logic would mean that we would never take money out of this account in the first place.
Just to repeat myself, the whole purpose of the investor save was that money will be taken out to invest in something to achieve savings.
Yes.
Part of those savings, which would be clearly identified when the money is drawn down, over a period, would then be paid back to replenish it. Not all of the savings, obviously, because there wouldn't be any point in doing it. But to ensure there is a continuous fund there, which is not supplied by any other source, for investment in the future. But clearly, you have not identified the savings to be achieved in order to replenish it.
Sorry, Councillor Carter.
To be achieved in order to replenish it.
Sorry, Councillor Carter. That statement you just made, which is you've clearly not identified the savings, is just not true. And if you've read the independent financial analysis of the LATC creation, you'll clearly see what those savings are. That does not mean that those savings that have not yet been realised and actually happened can be transferred back into the investor safe budget, because right at this minute they don't exist. There's a difference between identifying them and realising them.
If I can move on to page 156, Appendix F, the revenue estimates. Expenditure at Revs and Bends goes up by almost about 20%, 30%. Seems quite a lot. I probably more now.
Because what the government initially thought that they would do, the programme's actually been put back by the government endlessly, and we've actually been given, I believe, extra monies to tide us over while that is still going through. Yes. It's your government's causing the problems.
Sorry, Councillor Downs, that's totally meaningless. That's totally meaningless, but I won't pursue it. If I could move on to page 167.
Could I be absolutely clear? At the end of the day, the government proposed to actually take away this service and actually administer it itself. It is in chaos, and therefore, because it's in chaos, we continue to actually administer that system, and the government continues to actually pay us money because of that. If that's meaningless to you, so be it.
If I could move to page 167, environmental health, expenditure there is got by about 800,000 to 1.6 million, which seems a very high figure.
167. It's the top line of it.
We'll come back to you on that.
Yeah, I thought somebody might notice a big movement like that. If I could move on to the HRA business plan, page 225. It's the service plan, appendix 3.1. Looks like that.
Which page, sorry?
Page 225. Safety action plan. That little page, 4.2. Evaluate proposal to establish a local housing company using land where appropriate to support the development of increased housing of all types. And it says on the when column that it's been complete. So I'm just wondering what the outcome was, and whether you found the Housing and Finance Institute helpful.
Chair, if I can answer that question. I think that item within the service plan for 2014-15 related to previous options appraisal prior to the LATC development. And the outcome of that was to, because there's so many uncertainties around funding, we wait for that until the development of the LATC, and whether the LATC and its future work streams could involve setting up housing companies for development.
Thank you very much. If I can move on to page 255, the HRA budget recommendation A, the reduction in the rent of 1%. Can I just ask whether the annual rent letter to tenants explains clearly there is a reduction in the rent and why? We'll move on to page.
Yeah, I take that question as well. I think Councillor Carter raised a very good point, because in recent past the rent letters were quite simple in terms of their new rent. I think because of the changes to National Housing Policy and Welfare Reform, we are going through consultation at the moment as to what that narrative and text should be, which is on tenants, and I feel that the wide consultation will provide a meaningful and responsive letter to some of the questions that may want to be answered when the lender does go out.
I'm grateful, thank you. And recommendation B, towards the end, in the event of a significant change to the approved budget, will be reported to a subsequent meeting of Cabinet to seek clarification on what significant might be.
I think within the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan and Housing Revenue Account Estimates, I use the phrase known unknowns, which means that there's very little detail coming out in terms of the National Housing and Planning Bill, which requires us to make some assumptions for the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan. And that could range from being no significance to quite major significance. And if you see within the provision we made, we've made some £1.6 million provision that could go up to 10 to 15 million, depending on how the government rolls out their new policy. So that's what I would say, Chair, could be quite significant, which require Cabinet to have a look at the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan again.
And clearly a provision has been made, and clearly if it exceeds that provision, that would be one definition of what is significant.
Thank you. If I can move on to page 2. Thank you. If I can move on to page 265, paragraph 43, the growth items on the HRA. There's a transfer of costs of £147,000 from the general fund in connection with temporary accommodation. I'm just page 265, paragraph 4.3, table 4. Yes. Transfer of costs from the general fund, £147,000. I'm just wondering where the associated income from the temporary accommodation is going at the moment and in the future. Page 260.
Chair, take your questions as well. I think what you see both within the General Fund reports, General Fund Revenue reports and Housing Revenue Account reports, is a realignment of costs associated with temporary accommodation when acceptances are made. So you'll see some income within the General Fund, Housing General Fund estimates, and that will be a corresponding expenditure on the Housing Revenue Account. I'm quite happy to provide a note, Councillor Carter, if you want more clarity.
If you would, that would be indeed. And then just finish off the HRA, the penultimate paragraph on page 268. This is the report on the Housing Revenue Fund budget. Paragraph 59 says the Housing Standards Board reviewed this report at its meeting on the 18th of January 2016. No, it didn't. The Housing Standards Board received the business plan, but did not receive the HRA report.
Chair, I take that one. I think the agenda for the Standards Board that Councillor Carter mentioned looked at the business plan and the associated revenue and capital elements. Those reports you referred to for that weren't ready for circulation, and that's why we did a combined report on the agenda.
So to be technically accurate, the Housing Standards Board did not receive the HRA report. It was referred to on the agenda, but as you say, it wasn't ready at the time, so therefore the HSB could not have considered the HRA report. Therefore, this is incorrect.
I think it's an interpretation of the words. I think the report itself wasn't available for circulation, but the constituent parts of that report were discussed and considered, not just that meeting, but for the past 3 months.
Can we just clarify that in the minutes?
I quite accept that certainly the changes that have been announced over the last 6 months have been coming to the agency on a regular basis, particularly with regard to the capital programme, but the detail as to what the growth items and reductions and so forth are in detail did not come. So therefore it wasn't possible for the town reps to actually express a view on whether they agree or disagree with the changes. But I'll accept the chairman's comments on that. If I could move on now to page 286 on the capital programme. Paragraph 28.3. Direct revenue contribution of 286,000 from the general fund in respect to work relating to the financial management system, garages and the restoration of the given collection. Does the 286,000 cover all those items or just part of them? There is there is a reference elsewhere to a total of £858,000 as a movement.
You won't cover them. If you turn your microphone off, you get an answer. It covered the management system, and it covered the given collection, and it covered part of the garages.
And almost there, page 291, Appendix A, Housing Capital Programme. There appears to be no capital works on lifts after 2016-17. Does that mean all the lifts and so forth are up and ready and will last for the next 10 years?
Yeah, take that answer. I think within the specific that you mentioned, there's an additional additional resource requirement for new procurement for garages. The existing arrangements sit within the annual service charge for Keir Harlow Limited.
Sorry, this is lifts, not garages.
Lifts.
Thank you. During the plan period, there's nearly 1.3 million to be spent on housing IT, which seems quite a lot.
I think the intention for the capital or housing capital ICT budget was to develop the current water system, which may go in a number of directions depending on where the new LATC arrangements go in terms of application of contract support. And there's a 3-year programme. I'm happy to provide a note to you that helps in terms of what is forecasted indicatively in the budget.
Thank you, Joe.
I just have 2 questions, Chair, but then comments later when we get to that. The first question I have is on page 40 of the corporate plan, point 3, where it says work with Essex County Council to deliver transport infrastructure. Now, you won't be surprised that I bring up Junction 7A in that bullet point as one of the ward councillors. And Councillor Sue Livings and I are just looking to amend that bullet point where it says to build the case, continue to lobby and help identify a funding package for a new Junction 7A on the M11. I was wondering if the Cabinet would consider including a line to recognise the concern and interest by the town in this matter, because it is quite controversial. And if they would consider entering a line, the Council does also recognise the concern and interest across the town about this matter, especially in the wards that are directly affected, and whether or not they would consider entering that into the corporate plan. That's the first question.
I do fully recognise that there is concerned specifically in the areas of Old Harlow and that part of the town. I think it's fair to say that this will almost certainly become subject of a full council debate at an appropriate time, which concerns, and this is not a party political thing, will be shared with councils across the town. I have spoken, as you know, you were there at some length on the subject of the Churchgate Residents Association. Clearly, the strong preference is for a northern bypass. I think there has to be some recognition that that will have to be a phased approach. My preference would be to await a full council debate when this can be fleshed out.
My next question is on the general fund budget. One of the items which has been well documented in the local press is to extend the nappy and incontinent waste collection to a fortnightly service. When we were in administration and I was the Vice Chairman of the then Environment and Community Committee, I remember during the consultation process that was led by Councillor Tony Hall and Councillor Eddie Johnson, we received specific representations from families who didn't want their nappy waste being left for 2 weeks because it's disgusting. They wrote to us about this matter. A number of residents complained about this. So we recognised that within the plan for the waste contract and kept it to a weekly service. Given that there was such concern about that, I was wondering then if the council has consulted individuals that now continue on with the nappy waste and incontinence waste collection to seek their views on this change.
The answer to the question directly at the end is obviously no. I'm working with officers. What we have done is identified the fact that most people do not actually use the service, that they are in need of that service. Most people, and likewise most towns within this country, do put their nappies and other such items in their non-recyclable waste. And all we're doing is returning to what most authorities do.
Councillor Carter earlier on alluded to page 286 and the 286 incidentally £1,000 general fund work in relation to partly the restoration of the Gibbard collection. Firstly, do we own the Gibbard collection? Because I thought it was owned by the Harlow Arts Trust and just administered by the district council.
It was bequeathed. It's a long historical thing, but the paintings themselves historically were actually bequeathed to Harlow Council.
Right. Okay.
Albeit that we're very grateful for what the Arts Trust do, and obviously, in a sense, it's like one, but no.
The actual ownership still lies with us.
We own those paintings. Yes.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Landers. Could I maybe have a note on what exactly the restoration is going to entail? I'm not expecting an answer tonight, but a brief note on that would be very helpful. I have 2 remaining questions on the corporate plan. First, page 60 to Councillor Toll. Just see if I can find it. We talk about enhancing support for the Youth Council. What form will that enhancement take, please?
Many of you know it's kind of going through scrutiny at the moment. Where we recognise that there's maybe an issue that I think about how we work with the Youth Council and how we encourage them to do what is great, and they've done some great things over the years. So at the moment, this support is that we want to offer more support. What that will exactly entail, I know they're drawing up at the moment what they're going to bring to Cabinet, so I don't want to skip ahead of what Scrutiny is doing. Actually doing a really good thing. I went to the last session as a witness, one of the last sessions as a witness and things, so that will come out over the next few months as their findings are fed into us.
Can I follow that up, please? Your budget, general fund budget tonight includes an increase of £570 for the Youth Council. How much additional support is that going to provide them with?
Just a general comment while the Councillor is looking. So that enhanced support doesn't necessarily mean extra money. It could be better engagement with our councillors.
That 562, I believe, is the increase in recharges. I just need to double check what that is. So increasing recharges, obviously across departments, that's what that bit of the youth council is, I believe. We'll double check and we'll get back to you on that one. But as John said, it's not just about identifying financial support, it's about how we can support structurally, culturally. I think there's many things that can be done.
Won't even those elements of structural support, officer time and things, won't they have a financial cost associated with it?
As it stands, we think we can incorporate into the current budget and our current staff time. Obviously, it's not just Alan who we have on the budget, we have Christine and several others, but we're also receiving more support from the Essex Youth Service and what they're doing and working closely with them, and they're re-establishing their Young Essex Assembly structure and actually moving that into the youth service, and actually they're hoping that's going to work more and we'll be able to work better with that support as it goes on.
Okay, well, this is Councillor helping you out. My final question on the corporate plan goes to Councillor Wilkinson on page 55. His top priority for the town is to improve the cleanliness of the town. Can you tell me, please, how this squares with increasing the costs of bulky waste collection by 43%? Something that we were told when we were in administration would cause undoubted increase in flighting.
Thank you. There is no alignment of increasing the price for bulky waste to actual cleanliness of the town, as surveys has clearly showed. What we've done is look at what other local authorities within Essex charge for this service. Our charges are still reasonable, and you will remember that the realignment of the care contract a couple of years ago provided extra money for environment, which will provide now extra cleanliness for the town.
Could Councillor Wilkinson point me in the direction of these surveys that clearly show there's no correlation?
I'd be happy if it's provided, but I have clearly asked the officers about correlation, and if I'm sure the information is there. But last time charges were increased, there was no correlation between increasing charges and increased flighting in this town.
So, one final question then. Is the portfolio holder willing to guarantee us that we won't see an increase in flight tipping following this charge?
He's going to go out and do it himself.
Yeah, I can't obviously guarantee anything. I can't guarantee anything that the government's going to put our way neither at the same time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right, any further questions? Well, I'll just make some very brief opening remarks. So, these items are 10-15 all about the budget and the priorities for Harlow Council. I think it's worth starting by saying that there is some considerable uncertainty, whether that's in how business rates are going to be treated and the impact on the revenue support grant and how those things are going to be phased, around how much the retention of business rates locally will be impacted by liberalisation across the country, what additional responsibilities will be put on the council in return for that. There are uncertainties in the HRA space around enforced sale of void high-value properties in order to fund the right to buy for housing associations. So, although the local government finance settlement added an additional set of financial challenges on the council, which we have met without significant impact on services or jobs. Looking forward, there is still a significant amount of uncertainty. It is also worth mentioning council tax. We are proposing to increase council tax next year by 1.5%, which is broadly in line with forecasts for inflation. There's clearly a very broad spectrum of forecasts, but the average is around that number. It is interesting to note that government policy in this area has significantly changed. So in previous years, central government had provided a council tax freeze grant. It's also worth noting that if we had frozen council tax and taken that freeze grant, we would be looking to find an additional £390,000 this year to meet that shortfall. However, government policy has significantly changed, and the presumption is that you will raise council tax by as much as you are allowed to do, which is currently So while any increase is not necessarily desirable, the approach that this administration has taken is a sensible and, as far as is possible with the uncertainty I've already outlined, sustainable finances going forward. It is also worth noting that while clearly other councils are going through their budget setting process, the indications are that certainly for the precepting authorities in Harlow, that the Harlow element of that will be one of, if not the lowest, and possibly the lowest in the county. So I am, given all the uncertainty I've talked about, I won't say pleased, but we have landed in a place where the services for Harlow are protected with a low and sustainable increase in council tax. I will open this up for debate. Councillor Danvers.
Chair, it's been very, very difficult this year, and next year we're faced with the government actually taking away a further £1.6 million. The Fire Authority, which I serve on, is losing £10 million, and Essex County Council is losing an incredible £120 million.
Disgraceful.
The Fire Authority is putting up its council tax by 1.9%, or that's what is proposed. It hasn't been fixed yet, but the recommendation of the meeting that I will be attending in 2 weeks' time will be that. And in fact, Essex, it appears from the Cabinet meeting this week, that equally they will actually be looking at anything up to a 4% increase. The government will actually penalise local authorities that do not put up their council tax. The government's also in chaos with housing policy, which has been inflicted upon us. Goodness knows what it means for the residents of Harlow. People are going to be facing doubling of their rents if they actually have joint incomes or household incomes of over £30,000. People on our waiting list will have no security of tenure. Our housing stock will diminish. We will not be able to actually continue with the ambitions that we had to build housing. It really is just clobbering local government. This government has no conscience about actually making sure that the social policy is actually delivered. It's the same old story of people who are actually very wealthy, and that's fine. If you're poor, hard luck. If you're in between, you're now going to get really, really penalised. And that's what we're in for another 4 years, Chair. So it's gloom and doom. We're just about keeping our heads above water at the moment. But next year, it's almost impossible. We're also, as we've been in power, I've always maintained paying our staff year on year a wage increase, and once again we will be paying our staff 1%. I believe it's true that in Essex County Council, staff have not actually had a wage increase for quite some considerable time. And in fact, unlike the previous administration that actually cut the wages of this authority, we believe that we should actually pay for the officers. We get the officers that we deserve if we treat them properly. So that's an important part of this budget. So at the end of the day, difficult budget, but no cuts, no redundancies, but price to be paid in terms of the council tax increase.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As much as I want to respond to Councillor Danvers' rhetoric, I'll stick with protocol that the opposition don't say too much on this night. We've asked a number of detailed questions. Behind the scenes in the budget process, my budget team have been asking some very detailed questions of the officers, and I'd like to put on record my thanks to the officers for all their hard work. I know that they would have done a great deal of hard work with you, the administration, in putting together this budget, and they've done a great deal of work in helping us put together an opposition budget. So I'd like to thank the officers for that, for their hard work. We are very fortunate in this town to have a very good officer corps. I will not get tired of saying that. That being said, we will continue to ask a few technical questions in the coming week. We will be submitting our budget, our alternative budget, on Monday as per the rules of council, and I look forward to a very robust debate on Thursday next week, where perhaps I will answer some of Councillor Danvers' statements and misstatements, but I think, Mr Chairman, I'll leave it there.
Just to move on and also thank officers for all the hard work that went into this. Also like to thank the tenants and leaseholders who have a big part to play, and there's been a big consultation over the last 3 months in putting together this budget. I've put on record quite a number of times that I'm a big fan of self-financing and the fact that local communities should be able to have a say over their housing stock and over their own communities. And what we've been able to do since 2012 with self-financing is invest over £100 million into improving houses in Harlow, and that is having a measured impact on people's lives. So I'd like to thank officers who've helped us to be able to do that, and I'd also like to thank the concept of self-financing, which unfortunately is being dismantled as we speak with the 1% rent cut. And nobody can be against people having to pay less rents, but when we're putting together social policy, we need to think about the impact. And the impact for Harlow Council is £5.1 million over 4 years, and that indeed means less money for refurbishments. That means that we have to scale back a lot of our ambitions. I will say more on this next week, obviously, but also some of the achievements such as improving decent homes, and for the first time in 25 years being able to build council houses. I think that's a huge achievement for the town, and to have families living in those homes, and I know it's only 18 homes, but for those 18 families that's a big impact. That's something that will stay with them, that will give them some life chances they may not have had before. So I'd still like to maintain our priorities have to be more housing, and that's whether it's housing that we can build, and unfortunately because of the Housing and Planning Act that is currently going through Parliament, we will have to defer the building of council houses, but I want us to keep that at the forefront, and that as soon as we have the opportunity we're able to resume building council houses, and also to maintain the stock of housing to top quality. We met the decent home standard last year, and I want to maintain the decent home standard. It can fall quite quickly, so we need to make sure that we're on top of that and that we prioritise resources effectively. We also need to improve the choice that our residents have in terms of their housing opportunities and assist people that wish to downsize, for example, freeing up some of the larger homes. And we need to make sure that people have the best possible advice that they can get from our housing team. And we need to effectively maintain the health and well-being of our residents through making sure that we have the proper fire regulations, the proper asbestos management programmes and so on. And it's really important that although we are scaling back on certain works, we are maintaining the energy efficiency of our homes, because fuel poverty is something that we should not have in this town, and we should be moving to eliminate that to the best of our ability. So yes, I have lots of concerns, particularly over, for example, the rent cut. As I said, for individual tenants, not such a bad thing, but when you're looking at organising a business plan of over 9,000 homes, that takes a substantial amount of income away. And I've also got concerns in the Housing and Planning Bill about the changing security of tenure and the fact that we're going to have 5-year tenancies, and also the joint income of £30,000, meaning that you go on to market rents. Cool. That is actually not a huge amount of money, particularly when people may have debts, may have credit card bills and all the rest of it. And is that going to actually be a cap on aspiration? Because if somebody's got the opportunity to move on in their line of work, but it's going to impact their rents, then that's surely a problem. I do think that the Housing and Planning Bill is poorly thought out, and it's actually not had very much strong opposition from its own MPs, because I believe that there's a lot of Conservative MPs who are voting for it, but who actually are against it, but are not doing that. So really important that we do the best that we can for Harlow, and I believe that this report, considering the challenges we're facing, does that.
Thank you, Chair. My comments are squarely on the corporate plan. I'll save my comments for budget night, full council, on the general fund and other associated matters. I have to say, Chair, if you were to come here as someone who hasn't come from Harlow and listen to the Cabinet tonight, it's all doom and gloom. And that, in part, is reflected in the corporate plan, talking about a reduction in funding, they claim, and cuts and all these sorts of doom and gloom terms. I would rather see an administration reflecting their corporate plan a positive programme for change. Now, of course, in this corporate plan there are an awful lot of bullet points that are very difficult to disagree with. I think there's a lot of points here that many people would agree with, but it's couched in such a negative way at the very beginning that it's pointless. Frankly, I'm surprised with all the bullet points, there's no clear, coherent strategy to deliver them in my mind. The ultimate ambition of this council should be to drive forward improvements in the local economy so that we can achieve some of the aspirations that the council has always had in this town over many years, stretching different administrations. As Bill Clinton and his administration always said, it's the economy, stupid, and that should be reflected at a local level too. One of my chief concerns when you look at my own shallow portfolio area, regeneration and enterprise, is that there are in the corporate plan very weak timescales, just blocking things into being achieved in 2016 and 17. What I would have liked to have seen in the corporate plan is clear and defined timescales for really pushing progress, not just on regeneration and enterprise, but on some of the other policy areas. Ultimately, the corporate plan is a defining piece of language that officers, councillors in the administration live by. And if this corporate plan is approved, which it will be, it sets a very negative tone for the next few years for this council. What this council needs is a positive programme for change, strength and ambition to deliver a better local economy, and that's only going to be achieved by a Conservative administration.
Happy feels.
Council President advising people to take drugs.
Just ignore that remark.
Which one?
I'll let you
These all feel us already.
So, Councillor Charles has talked about the corporate plan being very negative, and certainly my foreword is anything but. It talks about the significant opportunity for growth and regeneration in terms of the very good announcements around public health England, around the progress that the enterprise zone is making, about the positive relationship that we have with Essex County Council and the things that we have stood up for and achieved despite opposition both locally and elsewhere in the county, standing up to the people of Harlow. So there is a general optimism, but that is clearly tempered by significant both policy of this government and significant about turns in elements of policy, which make the things that the council can do directly very difficult. However, that does not mean that the council won't continue to show leadership and tenacity in driving forward the interests of Harlow, which I'm determined that will happen. That's the third thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Conservative group have said that they don't wish to engage in politics tonight, but obviously we're drifting on to that subject inevitably. And all I'd like to say is that socialists are very optimistic, the most optimistic of people for the people that we represent. But unfortunately, at the moment, local authorities, and this isn't just a view of Harlow Council, this is a view of the County Council and the LGA, that we are being attacked by the government through cuts and severe cuts. And we have to reflect that. We can't pretend that they're not happening. We can't pretend that housing for ordinary people isn't being reduced and reduced. We can't pretend that there's a different world to what we actually face. But we are optimistic, and I think there are many proposals in the forward plan and in the corporate plan that set that out. Within the restraints that are imposed upon us, we are going to be the most optimistic and the most achieving that we can.
Councillor Davis.
Well, actually, both yourself and Danny have picked up the main threads that I wanted to say, but I do welcome Councillor Charles's support for the initiatives that we have achieved under this administration, both in partnership and without partnership, around new opportunities. And I actually think we've got a strong message, and I think we've got a positive message that we can take out not only to Harlow but to the wider area, specifically around regeneration and opportunity and enterprise. You've already seen, and it's within the corporate plan, our aspirations. It is simply not feasible in a corporate plan to actually put dates or times when something will happen. And as my counterpart in regeneration knows, the fact is that the aspiration of what we want to achieve is always fluid. It is always flexible. We take the opportunity when we can, but you're not going to say on the 12th of July, this is what is going to happen. It's about taking the experience, taking the opportunity. And this council and its officers especially are fit for purpose, who do a tremendous job. So yes, this is a debate about the corporate plan, but actually the corporate plan is aspirational. And actually, I think our officers are inspirational in being able to help us deliver the needs that we all want, which is a robust, positive environment for you to live, to grow, to work and play. So this budget that we've been talking about is a sensible budget, it's pragmatic, and it's realistic. But let's not be saying anything that we're not positive about the way forward, because certainly in my portfolio and in my team, we're only doing one thing, and that is going forward with our community to make the difference.
Are there any further contributions? I'm not going to make any conclusions other than to repeat briefly what I said at the beginning, because despite the constraints and challenges that the local government finance settlement has put before us, we have got, as far as is possible, a sustainable, sensible, practical budget that protects services in Harlow for a modest increase in council tax. And as far as the corporate plan, I think Councillor Charles is confusing a strategic document with a detailed plan with a capital P. Each of these areas in the corporate plan is supported by individual service plans, which will go into detail around dates and specific activities. And it will be entirely inappropriate for that to be in the corporate plan. Right, so items 10 to 16 on the agenda, with recommendations contained in the individual reports. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Right, item 17 on pages 339 to 342.
So moved, Chair.
Thank you, and I will second. Do we have any questions? Any comments? No. So the recommendation on page 39, are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. I'd like to take item 19 before 18, because this is the submission from the Scrutiny Committee, which upon recommendations is leading on to 18.
Move, Chair.
And second.
Do we have any questions, comments? So are we agreed? Okay, then item 18, which is the award contract for the Advow's supported housing services on pages 343 to 347.
Yeah, move, Chair.
A second that, Chair.
Any questions? Councillor Sinclair.
Thank you, Chair. I recommend this report personally because I know I've had experience with my mother using the care line. But what I would like to ask is if there is an older person living on her own with no families in Harlow or nobody they can get in contact with, are we going to make any exceptions to the costings for those people?
Chair, if I could answer that. I think what's mentioned in the report, Councillor Souter, is that we will work with those families or individuals who perhaps don't have that support and provide the right advice and support and protocols so that they know what they need to do in terms of help
143. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. So moving on to item 20, which is noting the minutes of various committees as coming up working with Housing Standards Board. Again, any questions or comments? The issues are noted. There being no matters of